being informal as well as it's going to be a two-way conversation. So hopefully think about some of the questions that you couldn't ask Josh. Make them as difficult as possible, right? Because that's the point. We have him here. So I'm going to start with the most difficult question.
I think you as HR professionals and the business people in India are very professional, very smart, very well educated, and you're running some of the most interesting companies in the world. So I think this is an incredibly amazing country, and I'm just really going to come back more. It's just a long ways away.
Right. Thank you for all the compliments. Guys, you have to give him a round of applause. He's complimented this very audience, right? But anyway, moving on, I think Josh spoke to us about some of the HR disruptions, like the 6 or 7 key disruptors. I think my question to you, Josh, is that the disruptors are probably not in the control directly of every single individual sitting here. So as you look at it in India, we have economic reforms, which you probably caught today's newspaper on the whole indirect taxation. We have the growth opportunities, and then you have the HR disruptors. Now for people in this room who are predominantly HR leaders, what are they supposed to do? Like, what would you tell them?
Well,
like, how do you?
Yeah, I would say, listen, when you look at the kinds of presentations that I give and the information, we're covering a lot of ground. You only have to do 1 or 2 really successful things to have a huge impact on your company. So I would say one of the most important things you should do, where does your company really make money, and what are the really big problems or challenges or opportunities your company has this next 12 months, this year, and make sure you're focusing a significant amount of your effort on that. If you're a fast-growing company, it's going to be all about recruiting. If you're a big company that's going through a merger and acquisition, it's going to be all about culture and engagement and leadership. If you're launching a new product, if you're going into a new market, it's going to be all about learning. So I would focus on the business initiatives that are critical to your company and try to do one major transformation at a time. You can't do all of it. Taking that approach, you'll see that you can learn from each one you do. That's the most important thing. The second is that everything you do should be aligned with the business strategy. We can sit around all day and talk about great stuff to do in HR, but if the organization is struggling from low performance or low revenue or product quality, that's really where you should be spending your time. So that's the way I would prioritize.
Makes sense to me. I don't know about this group, and we will open it up for a couple of questions. So probably the last question from my side before we open it up, and I'll come back to probably a few more questions. So one of the things that I think Josh does very well, for those of you who are with your smartphones, while Esther got us to do some stuff on Twitter, I would say go look up the 2016 predictions by Bersin and by Josh. They're outstandingly simple. I mean, that's the way I would say. And when I looked at that, just one single pager, one of the sort of 6 predictions that stood out for me was the focus on leadership development. And I think what you said underneath that was the challenge especially for probably a market like us, which is growing. We have a lot of millennials, we have young people leaders, so how is leadership development going to look and feel a little different? So talk to us a little bit about what you meant there, and also, like, we're 6 months into the year. Do you see companies doing something different?
Well, you know, the leadership problem is always the number 1 or number 2 or number 3 problem in companies. And I would guess what I've learned over the years, and we're about to produce a big piece of research on this, is that leadership development is more about the context and the environment and less about the education and the training. You'd be surprised how little it really matters, the development itself. It's the culture of leadership, having a model of leadership, having an organization that values leadership, that talks about leadership, that supports leaders, that moves leaders around, that gives lots of people opportunities for leadership and honors leadership. I think leadership is something you actually kind of have to honor as a noble profession. It's not, being a leader is not just being a boss. Companies that think, oh, well, you know, we want you to make, you know, improve sales, so now you're the sales manager, and by the way, go to this class and we'll teach you about management, and then come back and double the revenue, and we're going to give you a higher quota. That is not the way to build good leadership. So I think it's a very systemic problem that starts at the top, and the CEO has to feel that way. The CEO and the top executives have to take time to talk about leadership, tell stories, help people, coach people. And as you know, leadership, everybody who moves into leadership finds out it's a lot harder than it looks. Leaders need support too. So that's really what I've learned over the years. I don't think it's the training.
Very, very insightful. Any burning questions at this stage?
Hi, my name is Manish. I'm from ystep.com. Josh, since this is a TechHR conference, can you outline top 3 predictions of technology impacting HR?
I am in the middle of writing that right now, actually. I would say, here's a couple things. Building a great HR solution is not about having a lot of features anymore. It's about having fewer features that are so easy to use that people actually use it. That's number one. And that's a big change from the way it used to be. I mean, I used to go to these conferences and you would go around to the booths and everybody had software that had 100 features and 100 tabs and all this complicated stuff. And people were buying it based on the number of features and the number of tools. That's not going to work anymore. I mean, you have to be able to hide the complexity, and that's actually a very, very difficult design problem. That's number one. I think the number 2 is figuring out what a mobile experience of your app should be. I don't think that's obvious in a lot of cases. I think the industry is getting better at that, but most of the mobile solutions are mobile versions of the web solution, which is not always the right way to do it. And the third thing that I actually think is going to be really big is thinking about how to use gamification features and behavioral economics and analytics to nudge people to do things, not force them to do it. Like, if the system gives you a recommendation to tweak a goal or a recommendation to take a course or to look at a video, and that's a meaningful recommendation based on data that actually turns out to be a good recommendation, that's going to be a killer app. Giving people 50 videos to look at and letting them filter through and search for the one they want, that's not going to be a useful app. So I would say figuring out how to really use gamification and data to recommend an activity is a really critical feature.
Thank you, Josh. So I think there's a lot that's been written and read about millennials, right? A lot of research. What is probably that aha moment when you looked at the latest research, or what do you feel were trending from a millennial standpoint?
Yeah, the millennial topic has been a little bit overdone, but it's probably worthy of all the press that it's gotten. I mean, it's definitely pretty clear to me, and I think you probably all realize this, that people that have grown up in the millennial era, those of you that are in your 20s and 30s, you've had access to technology and global communications and digital tools, since you were born. And, I still find it, when I see people walking down the street looking like this, or using their phone in a meeting, I still feel like it's rude, right? It feels to me like it's rude, but everybody does it. So I got to get over that. So I do think that that's number one, is that you as a group are adopting technology way faster in ways that have never been done before. So that's pushing the technology industry. Second thing is that most of you in the millennial sort of era are very ambitious people that are not going to wait 30 years to become a general manager in one company. Now, when I graduated from college in 1978, and when I got out of college, the best thing you could do was to go work for a big company and stay there as long as you could. So you spent all this time figuring out which company you want to work for. You focused your efforts. You applied for a job. By the way, it was a written resume and you mailed it and you waited to hear from them. And I know it sounds odd, but that's the way it worked. And if you got the job, you're like, that's it. You told your family, I got a job at IBM, I'm in. And you built your whole career around doing everything you could do to work your way up that company. And companies built their entire systems around that. You know that, because American Express was that way. That's not the way you guys want to run your careers. I mean, you're lucky if you find a company you want to work for 10 years. Maybe that'll happen, maybe that won't. Your expectations and the transparency that you have access to has created a demand on the workforce, on the workplace, that employers are really trying to struggle with. And then the third thing is, I think most of you, and I don't mean to be generalizing about this, but I have 2 kids that are millennials. You have very high expectations for your life. you expect to have time to exercise. You expect to have time to go home and do fun stuff. You expect to go on fun trips. You expect to enjoy work. You expect to work in an office that's actually kind of a nice place to be. Maybe have a ping pong table or whatever it is. Those expectations, we had those expectations too, but we never said anything about it. We just accepted that things were the way they were. So I think a lot of the things that you have demanded among the workplace are good for everybody, and they're very common desires that every human being has. So I think you've had a huge impact on the design of work. So those are the big things that I've seen. And so I think a lot of the press on millennials is a little overdone, but I think it's been really worthwhile, because I think companies have really woken up. By the way, there's another side to that. People in their 60s and 70s are not going to retire. They want to work until their 70s and 80s. What about them? You know, they have other needs. So there's another side to that demographic thing that I don't think companies have figured out yet, that we actually haven't been talking enough about.
Yeah, very, very interesting. Yeah, we have some questions. So, okay, let me start with Anjali here.
Hi, Josh. Talk to us a little bit about design thinking and, about how organizations are making that transition between the traditional way of designing processes and to a more, end-user centric. How's that transition happening?
Okay, so design thinking, I'm learning as fast as I can about this. I went to visit one of the most successful software companies in San Francisco. It's a company called Pivotal Software. They designed Uber's app. They've designed all the major, consumer apps out there. Very, very sophisticated software engineering company. And they told me how they do design. And this applies to HR. They basically said the way we do design is we have 3 people involved in every project. We have a business analyst who understands the business. We have an engineer who knows how to build stuff. And we have a designer. The designer is both a graphic designer and a user interface designer. And those 3 people pick a problem that's a business problem, and they study the customer. They interview the customer. They visit the customer. They go out with the customer. In other words, go out with the employees, see what's going on. And then they go back and they build a solution that solves one problem. So the characteristics of that are, number 1, it's a small team. Number 2, they're very, very, very close to their users. They actually spend a lot of time with them, and they look at them, they study them, they watch them, they interview them, they really understand what their day-to-day environment is like. Number 3, they design a small solution first, and they iterate on it over time. That's a very different way of solving problems than, getting together. I've been in, lots of HR departments and designing a whole giant thing that everybody in the company is going to use. So those principles are very easy to figure out, but they're not necessarily easy to do. I interviewed some folks. By the way, most of you, if you work in a consumer company or a product company, you probably have designers in the product part of the company. Get one of those designers to work in HR with you. Get an actual designer to come, be part of your team. Because the designer will look at the solution in a different way. They'll look at what you're doing and they'll say, this is terrible. So that's a little bit about it, and it's starting to pick up. And I think seeing things like the session here is great.
One of the things that happens is, we do a lot of engagement surveys. What we hear back quite often is work-life balance. We build on the Gallup studies. It's really work content and work quality. I wanted to pick this part on design thinking. How is it, and the part that you showed in the conference side, that the organization structures are changing. It's not as hierarchical anymore with the advent of technologies. The question is, how can you apply design thinking to ensure that we're recrafting the jobs in a way that it addresses the job quality issue as well as the...
It's a great question. So the question is, how can you apply design thinking to redesign jobs? So in your particular case, I've been in sales, so I know a lot about sales. I don't know what your sales operation is like. Go out there and study the actual behavior of a sales team when they won a big deal. What did they do? Who was involved? Who did they talk to? Who in operations helped them? Who in finance helped them? Who in marketing helped them? What tools did they use? Look at what worked. And you will probably find that you're not organized effectively to do that again. That you had some superhuman effort that somebody figured out, oh, well, whenever time I win a deal, I need to get this guy involved and that guy involved, and I need to do this kind of proposal, and I get to this kind of help in pricing. That will encourage you to think about, now what can we do to design the organization to do that more and more and more? I'll give you an example at Deloitte. So at Deloitte, basically two things happen at Deloitte. You're either selling work or doing work. And when you're selling work, you're listening to companies' problems, you're hearing these enormous problems, and then you're going back to the office and you're building a giant proposal on how to do it. Most consultants don't know how to build those proposals, but they're doing it. They're building PowerPoint decks, they're figuring out how to price things, they're getting projects. So in the US, somebody studied this process and said, you know what? We need a center of excellence for large pursuits. We need a group of people that write these proposals, that make them really, really good. It was a very simple idea.
Given you spoke about your diverse background, you said you did, product, sales, marketing, you were an entrepreneur, and before I come to the success mantra, which I will, what did you enjoy the most? Like, what was your favorite role?
I guess my example, I studied engineering, and I love science and math, and I hated being an engineer. I just hated it. It was not a job I liked. And I actually had a bit of a crisis after I started working as an engineer. I thought, I just went to school and spent all this money, and I don't even like what I'm doing. And I guess I just was lucky enough that I was willing to stop what I was doing and do something else. So I went into sales, then I went into marketing and did a bunch of other jobs. I think the most fun that I've ever had in my career, two things. Number one is working with customers. I've learned in all the jobs I've ever had, sometimes you have to stop what you're doing and get out of the office and just go meet with people. It doesn't matter what job you're in. If you don't do that, you're missing the context of your work. So that's number one. The second thing that I found the most interesting is I had an opportunity to be a VP of marketing relatively early in my career, and I realized that for most companies, marketing can be one of the most strategic things you do because it helps you figure out where you fit in the market. What is the market demanding? What does the market need? Where is the hole in the market? How can we position ourselves so people understand what we do? That isn't just marketing on the outside. Then you have to reflect that inside and say, wait a minute, we shouldn't be doing this. We shouldn't be doing this. Why aren't we doing this? So I actually found the most interesting part of my work was really with the marketing part of my career.
Wow. The other thing that when I often meet a lot of HR professionals is this notion of we don't have too many non-HR people working in HR. And while we've had a few good examples in today's conference, well, what's your view? Do you think that's changing, or do you think, what is the barrier? Why aren't people taking HR?
First of all, I do not believe that somebody who isn't in HR can just walk into HR and be good at it. I do not believe that. I think what you guys do is a profession, and there's a lot of professional skills and education needed. So I'm not a big fan of that. On the other hand, I think everybody in HR should have rotations into the business. You should not only spend your time in HR. Work in sales, work in operations, work in marketing, work in customer service. Spend a year or two there. You will suddenly realize that all the management problems that you tried to design in the HR department are way more complicated than you thought they were. And you'll really develop much more expertise and you'll be much more valued to your company. So I think all HR departments should have rotation programs to bring people out into the business and back. Now, if somebody in the business lands in HR, the big question is, why did they land here? Did they fail and then get thrown into HR because they weren't doing the job? That's not a good thing. So I don't think HR should be a dumping ground for people that didn't succeed in other jobs.
Hi Josh, my name is Praful. My question for you is, how should schools, colleges and universities tweak their curriculum so that the workforce which is entering the market is much more future ready, industry ready?
Deal with a lot of uncertainty and make a lot of decisions without good information. So I think schools have to provide some degree of real-world project experience. I think schools should provide professional coaching to students on what are the career opportunities that are going to be good possible fits for you. Otherwise, where do you find that out? You just go out, you look for a job, maybe you're lucky, you find something you like, maybe not.
That's probably the experience that I had in the last 30 minutes with you. So thank you for sharing your time with all of us.